Good evening. My name is Tim Neff. I'm a Vice President and Director of Museum and Education at Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I would like to welcome you to our monthly program called Spotlight On. This is a program where the second Thursday of each month we take a moment to highlight different topics related to our museum's mission and highlight several artifacts related to that topic. So I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight for Spotlight On. And we'll be talking about the United States Navy tonight. And before we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about Soldiers and Sailors in case you're new to us. Let me pull up my slideshow here and show you our beautiful building. This is our building here, located in the Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh. And Soldiers and Sailors here was built back in 1910 as a Civil War memorial. But today it stands as a memorial and a museum that honors all veterans from the Civil War through present day. And our exhibits are filled with artifacts that have been donated to us through the years by veterans and their families. And we use these objects to tell their story and honor their service to our country. If you've never been here before, I encourage you to come visit us. It's a great place to come and learn about many of the local veterans from the Pittsburgh area. And if you've been here before, please come back and see us sometime. And we'll talk a little bit more at the end of our program about some of our upcoming events and different ways that you can visit the museum. As always, we are live, and if you have any questions and answers, if you're watching us live here on Facebook, you can just add a comment, and we can take care of that as the program moves along here. If you're watching on YouTube, you just can email us at soldiersandsailorspittsburgh@gmail.com, and we will get back to you with an answer. And you can email us anytime, even if you're not watching us live. You can always send us an email to get a question answered if you have any questions. Joining me tonight, as usual, is our curator of collections at Soldiers and Sailors, Michael Kraus. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
I'm well, Tim. How are you?
Good, good. I'm excited about tonight's program. We obviously have selected the United States Navy as a topic, a pretty broad topic, but very appropriate because coming up on October 13th will be the 250th birthday or anniversary of the United States Navy. So that is one of the reasons we wanted to highlight that branch of the military tonight. And I think we've got a lot of great stories in our collection that we're going to be talking about as we go through the program tonight. So I'm really excited about it. Let's jump right into it. And we're going to start with the outside of our building. And the building was built, as I mentioned, in 1910. However, some years later after that, in 1923, two statues were added to the outside of our building. One with a statue of a Civil War soldier, and then this one here of a Civil War sailor called Lookout. And Michael, what can you tell us about the statue that we're looking at here?
Well, these were, as you say, additions to the building, not exactly original, but in the time of a lot of Civil War veterans who were using the facility. This was commissioned. The artist's name was Frederick Hibbard. He was from Chicago. It's interesting because the two statues, soldier and sailor, stand on big granite plinths. And at one time, before the statues arrived, those were flagpoles. And we see that in early photographs of soldiers and sailors. They were flagpoles. So the idea was to get two colossal size. These are 11 or 12 feet high statues that kind of, set the stage, in other words, of what a soldier and sailor would look like.
Yeah, and I think they're probably a little bit more significant. We were talking about this in our preparation for the program. If you look at our building from the outside, across the top of the building, it says Allegheny County Soldiers Memorial. That is what is engraved in the stone of our building. And if you notice there, who's missing? The sailors. And we don't have any kind of documented proof of this, but I think the feeling was sailors were felt left out, and they did not feel like they were included in this Civil War memorial. And I think this might have been a way to maybe solve that issue, or come to an agreement as a way to acknowledge the sailors by having the two statues out in front of our building, the soldier on one side and then the sailor on the other. And obviously almost anybody that you ever talk to always calls it soldiers and sailors, but I do think at the very beginning it was under the consideration of just the soldiers memorial.
Yeah, they even have names. Each statue, the soldier's called Parade Rest, and this was called Lookout. is how they were intended. That was their title. That's a good trivia question for somebody, actually. So remember that. What's interesting is because they were representative of the Civil War era, supposedly, Hibbard had to kind of work out the details. Now, he made some mistakes. Some of it is not correct, especially just looking at the soldier. He's wearing a blouse, a uniform jacket that was not that did not come into the Army until the Spanish-American War. And the sailor, we have the correspondence that Hibbard wrote back and forth to Evans, Samuel Evans, who was the superintendent, while they were planning the statue. And Hibbard and Evans both referred to talking to actual Civil War Navy men who either one worked at Soldiers and Sailors and one Hibbard knew in Chicago as to some of the details and consulted with them. And just addressing the sailor, the sailor, in fact, Hibbard called him an old tar. The sailor suggested that a revolver be worn on his belt. In fact, he called it a Colt 45, which those were not developed yet. It would have been a 44 or a 31. He suggested that, and he suggested a cartridge box on the back, and the belt buckle that the sailor is wearing says USN, which it was not a Civil War belt buckle. The sailors wore a US if they wore anything at all, but the sailor and Hibbard both thought it would be, help tell the story if it said USN. So these were things that pop up in the shoes too. They didn't know what kind of shoes the sailor wore. And these are addressed in some of the correspondence we have. So interesting. Certainly the look is there, the bib collar, the flap front trousers, which Hibbard had. There was a small contention about making the seam go farther. Very interesting dialogue for me, especially as a sculptor. I really enjoyed looking at it. But that's where our sailor came from, and here he is.
Yeah. So next time you're at Soldiers and Sailors, you'll have to take a minute. It's something you can just walk into the building and not even take a moment to really appreciate these two, as Michael said, larger than life statues on either side representing the soldier and the sailor here. But then we're going to head inside the building, and we're going to come upon a painting that we have in our collection. This painting hangs in our Gettysburg room, and it is a depiction of a naval battle in the Civil War, and a battle between the USS Kearsarge and the CSS Alabama. And Michael, you want to tell us a little bit about what we're seeing in this painting depicted here?
Sure, it was a very famous engagement. The Alabama was a blockade runner, and as you may or may not know, one of the tactics in the Civil War was for the Union to block any shipments coming from Europe that were supplies, uniforms, guns, equipment that came from Europe to the Confederate Army. Union ships would interrupt that. Those were called blockade runners because there was a blockade, and these ships would try to break through. And the Alabama was a blockade runner. It had a very famous commander, Raphael Semmes was his name. But in I think it was June of 1864, off the coast of Cherbourg, France, the Kearsarge, an American warship, finally found the Alabama. They've been looking, all the Navy ships have been looking for them all over the place. And they engaged in a contest. It was one of the only sea battles of the Civil War, of ship against ship. And both ships scored direct hits. The Alabama scored a couple really strategic hits on the Kearsarge, but they didn't explode. The shell simply lodged into the Kearsarge's works and hull, but the Kearsarge managed to fire on the Alabama and knock some holes into it and sink it. And the cool thing, Semmes was quite a guy. He refused to surrender, jumped overboard in a lifeboat, threw his sword overboard, jumped overboard in a lifeboat, with some of his men. You can see them floating around here, and they were picked up by British ships in the area. So he never surrendered. He went back to the South and finished the war. He was made an infantry brigade commander, quite a colorful character. And the scene is not well painted. It's a giant painting. This painting is big, but you look closely, it's a little primitive. It's done by an artist whose last name is Love, but we do not know anything more than that. I can't find him on any biographies. Someday, perhaps we'll find it. But the striking thing is really the frame. The frame is beautiful. It has this beautiful rope, carved rope boundary around it, and it does depict this very famous naval battle between two American ships, one Confederate and one Union.
Yeah, and I think I always try to impress on people when I'm giving tours, that this is all the way across the ocean. This is the American Civil War, stretching all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, where you wouldn't expect there to be any connection. But of course, with the supply runs that you mentioned, Michael, and the blockades, here we are off the coast of France seeing the Civil War played out. So it is a large painting, and it is, as I just said, on display in our Gettysburg room at Soldiers and Sailors. Okay, our next piece here is another large piece, and this is in the back corner of our building, right around the Spanish-American War era, and this is the bow ornament for the USS Pennsylvania. The USS Pennsylvania pictured there in the center. You can just make out on the front of that photo of the ship what we're looking at in much larger on either side of it, which is called the bow ornament, a decorative piece made of bronze that would have been mounted on the front of the ship. And this was mounted on there, I believe, just for a few years, right, Michael? It wasn't
Right.
always on the ship, but it was served a very important purpose at the time.
Well, when the Pennsylvania was launched in 1903, and other ships of the fleet, that most of them had these big, heavy bow ornaments. They were traditional pieces on ships. Europe, England, and the U.S. adopted it too. The thing is, around 1907, I think it was. Well, you see the piece here, and it's kind of a beautiful bronze color, but originally it was gilded in gold leaf, so it's very bright, and it could be seen from pretty far away. So it was determined that these bow ornaments were a little archaic and not really in course with where the Navy was going, and they were removed from ships. So the Pennsylvania was removed, I think, in 1907, and we have this piece. We also, if you notice the wings that come off to the side, we also have those pieces. Now, I might say this thing looks, when you're looking at it here, like you could knock it over with a feather, but it's 1,800 pounds of bronze, this single piece right here. And as you'll see in a minute, we got it in the building, and it's really it actually belongs to the Navy. It's on loan. It once decorated a concrete fake bow at Carnegie Institute before it was Carnegie Mellon, and they had to move it. It went in storage, and they asked us if we wanted it, so we worked the details out with the Navy, and we have to report on it every year that we still have it, and it's in good shape. We take photographs and send it to them.
Yeah, I think it's very symbolic. It was we know that it was not a part of the Great White Fleet, but it is of that time frame of the Great White Fleet and the symbolism of the United States' arrival as a world power. And it was a part of a way to kind of beat our chest a little bit by putting these gilded pieces on the front and joining the other world powers that have already doing this type of thing. So it's a very cool piece, very historical, but like Michael said, very large and heavy. And to get it to our building was quite an ordeal. First of all, it had to have some work done to it, right, Michael? I believe we had to, do some very gentle sandblasting to kind of get back to that.
Right. It had been outside for a long time, and it had been painted once or twice. And I was able to take it. We had a benefactor who let us use his factory, and they sandblasted it for us. And then I applied the patina. It was a hot patina with a torch. It's a ferric nitrate, and it makes it that beautiful brown. Bronze is yellow like brass, but we think of bronze statues and things as being this brown because it's a forced patina that's put on them. So I was actually standing on top of it with a torch, heating the metal up to 200 degrees, and then spraying the chemical on it. And then once that was done, hand buffing it with wax, several coats. And then we had to orchestrate a stand for it. So you see, that's our president and CEO, John McCabe, standing when we went to pick it up. And there's a really nice metal frame that a Navy veteran who's a welder constructed for us. And you see it being brought in the building. We were a little concerned it weighed so much, if pushing it down the hall, whether the vibration would injure the building. And we had engineers look at our building, and we had these very adept movers move it into place, and that's where it is today.
Yeah, and we do hope to one day have it outside again with the wing pieces that you saw in the photo that are not currently on display on a bow out on our front, Remembrance Park long-term project. But for now, it has a great home in the back corner of the building in that time frame. And the USS Pennsylvania is pretty well known for a very important piece of history, naval history especially. It is the ship that is the first time that an airplane landed on the ship. And this was done by Eugene Ely. And you can see here they had to construct that wooden deck. And Michael, you were telling me how precarious this was for this young pilot, Eugene Ely, to land this plane on that deck there.
Yeah, remember, this had never been done before. And this is the beginning of naval aviation. It would become the beginning of naval aviation once they saw it was possible. You're right, Tim. They built this tilted ramp so he could fly and kind of use the momentum to get up on there. And the photo on the right is really interesting. What they did, they had these cables across the ramp, and on each end of the cable were two sandbags, these big heavy sandbags. And his plane had a tail hook, like planes that land on ships today. And the idea was that when he caught the sandbags, that would slow him down. He missed the first 11 sandbags, and he caught the rest, and it actually did slow him down. But that was the first successful landing. Now, he had taken off on another ship, not this event. It was another time. But this is the first landing, and it's very, very amazing. And you notice that the bow ornament is not on the ship at this point in time. It's been removed because this is 1911. And the ornaments were removed in 1907.
Yeah, and it's kind of paving the way for aviation within the Navy. We'll be talking about a few Navy pilots later on, and this would have been that first step to incorporating aircraft into these naval battles here. So pretty amazing piece of Navy history that we have.
And don't forget, I mean, this is another trivia fact. The Pennsylvania, the name was changed on the USS Pennsylvania. So what did it become? It became the USS Pittsburgh, and it was one of the chain of USS Pittsburghs that have been in the Navy since I believe it's the Civil War was the very first USS Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and we'll introduce another variant of the USS Pittsburgh, a later version of the USS Pittsburgh here in just a little bit. But before we get to that, we're going to show you another amazing piece of history here that we have at the museum. And this is a clock from the USS Oklahoma. And if that name rings a bell to you, it's probably because you know that that was one of the ships sunk at Pearl Harbor. And this was salvaged out of the harbor after the ship was sunk. And it has some writing on there, right, Michael? A little bit of information on the back there. And once again, just an amazing piece of history from that fateful day on December 7th, 1941.
Yeah, when you think about it, this is one of the sacred days of American history, December 7th, 1941. And the Oklahoma is one of the casualties of the enemy attack. It was sunk. It actually flipped on its side in the harbor, and then they they actually did raise it. It took a couple years with pylons buried into the seafloor and cables, and they were able to get it up and get it floating. And we're transporting it back to San Francisco, and it sunk. It was being towed, and it sunk. But before that, they salvaged as much as they could off of it. And we see on the back of this clock is engraved Galley CS Okla. That's the galley of the commission ship Oklahoma. And what else is really interesting is clockmakers and watch repair people. I don't know if they still do it, but in days gone by, when a watchmaker would work on a watch, they would engrave the date and sometimes their initials of when they serviced that clock. And this one has, I believe it's a date of, I think it's April 1941. So it's a couple months before it sank.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we got it. It was sold in salvage, and it ended up in Du Bois, Pennsylvania, in a hardware store. And it was there for years as a trophy and a curiosity. And when some soldiers were coming home from Korea, hometown boys, one of them was in the store, and the store owner said, "I have something for you." And he gave it to the soldier. And many years later, the soldier and his family donated it to us.
Yeah, that soldier's name was Don Heller, and he was a Korean War veteran, as you said, Michael. So it's quite a journey to find its way from that historic day to Pennsylvania, and then eventually to our museum. And it's certainly one of those pieces that when I'm giving tours, I make sure to highlight and really try to impress on, especially young people, that you're seeing something that was actually there, at that time. I know, we do the same thing with D-Day and the Battle of Gettysburg and these, very important American history events. So really, really amazing piece there on display at the museum.
Now I set the time for it's 7 minutes after 8 for when the ship sunk.
Yeah, for when it went down. So that it was frozen in time, we'll say.
It's now frozen in time. Yeah.
Okay, there's a photo of the Oklahoma there, and a good photo of it on its side, as Michael is describing in the efforts to try to get it right side up, which, like you said, they did, but then it ended up meeting its fate while being towed back to San Francisco. Okay, our next one here is the next version of the USS Pittsburgh. This version here, what we're looking at is a large model here of a heavy cruiser, the USS Pittsburgh, that was launched in 1944 and served at the end of World War II and served right into Korea. And it's a beautiful model, just an amazing piece in itself. It was done by a master model builder. His name is Henry Piersick. The reason I wanted some of the close-ups here as best we could, the deck of the ship, this is one of the things I love pointing out, especially in that top right photo you're looking at. Those are matchsticks that he cut up and glued down across the deck to give it its wooden look there. So this is really a sight to see. If you're in the museum, you can't really appreciate it until you're up close to it. But it's a great tribute to the USS Pittsburgh, as I said, that served in World War II and Korea. And it also has a pretty interesting story from its time in World War II. And if we go to our next photo, we're seeing this now with the whole front bow taken off as a result of a typhoon that took place in June of 1945. A typhoon ripped off the front of the ship. And amazingly enough, it doesn't sink. And they close the bulkhead doors or whatever it does. It stays afloat, and the bow literally floated away. And eventually this Pittsburgh was towed back to Guam, and a new bow was put on. And then, it kept on serving, years later into the Korean War. But kind of a funny story about that is when the bow broke away from the ship, the sailors on the ship, I guess being a little familiar with the Pittsburgh area, they nicknamed the bow as it floated away the USS McKeesport. And of course, that was around the time, McKeesport had broken away from Pittsburgh to become its own, entity. And the same thing had happened with the bow. It had broken away and become its own floating entity in the Pacific Ocean during World War II. So this is kind of the story of the USS Pittsburgh and the ill-fated USS McKeesport. The next one we have here is the USS Caldwell, another model that we have here from World War II. This is a destroyer, and this is a cool model because it's exploded. In other words, the side is removed, and you can see into the compartments of the ship here. And this ship has an amazing story. And maybe Michael, you want to tell us, what happened to the Caldwell?
Yeah, the Caldwell. The cutaway view is really interesting. You see that the rooms are all labeled and everything. It was made by a sailor. He was, I believe, he was an ensign at the time, a junior officer, Mel Kratsley, who was a big sports hero in the Pittsburgh area, and later became a basketball coach. Do you remember where he coached basketball? Was it Carnegie or Pitt? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it would have been Carnegie Tech. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a very successful basketball coach, but in the war, he served on the Caldwell, and they were engaged in the Pacific, and they were experiencing. This is a time when there was a lot of kamikaze attacks. These were Japanese fighter planes that the pilot would direct his craft right into the ship. They had a torpedo tied on the bottom, and it was a suicide mission, but that's how they would guide in and make very effective strikes. The Caldwell had a sister ship a day before, and I'm sorry I don't have the date, but the day before this particular action, the sister ship was hit by, I think, 4 or 5 kamikaze planes and sunk in 15 minutes. So the men on the Caldwell had witnessed that. And the next day, there was a second attack on the Caldwell. And one of the planes hit the Caldwell near the radio room in the back, near the tower there you see. Kratsley was a big man. He was athletic and big. And he directed himself and some others to go into the ammunition, the powder magazines, and get 100-pound barrels of powder and throw them overboard before the ship exploded. So they were busy doing that and putting out fires. And the way Kratsley's son told us that the commander of the ship ran to the back and was waiting for the signal to give the signal to abandon ship, thinking that the ship was going to go down, but it didn't. These guys saved it. And Kratsley believed that he should have received in very well, it's not far from the truth, a higher honor than just a Bronze Star, which is what he got for that action. But when he came home, certainly the experience is a big part of his life. Oh, the other thing he got, the captain gave him the kamikaze pilot's pistol, and that's it right there in the picture. And if you come to see it, you'll notice that it's cracked and burned because the plane caught fire when it hit the Caldwell. And this was a trophy souvenir and was given to Kratsley. Kratsley came home. He was really, the service on the Caldwell was a big part of his life. And he managed to smuggle the plans to the Caldwell out, and he built this model. He built it to scale. He built all the little pieces. This wasn't something you buy in a model store, but it's really amazing the work that went into it and the labeling, and it gives us an understanding of the Caldwell, its day in history, and Mel Kratsley. It's all kind of combined into that one piece.
Yeah, and that was the date of that attack was December 12th, 1944, and 25 men did lose their lives. However, like you said, the ship did not go down. So it was part of the efforts of Kratsley that made that happen. And I know one of our longtime docents knew Mr. Kratsley's sons, and he remembers going to the house and seeing this model on display at their house.
It was on the piano.
Yeah, on their piano in their living room. Before eventually the family donated it to us. now it's a pretty significant piece on display. So two kind of back-to-back models there, like you said, not things you buy in the store. Of course, the USS Pittsburgh model we saw is a lot larger, but still very unique. And then this one is unique because of the way it's opened up so that you can see into the compartment. So definitely, I think we also have a photo real quick here of the Caldwell in life. You know, there it is as a destroyer during the war there in this photo here. All right. I think the next one we have is another ship called the USS Sangay, and this was an ammunition ship, I believe, Michael, and had I'd say, well, let's call it this inspirational painting aboard, right?
Yeah, most people are probably familiar with nose art that was on bombers and airplanes. And this is a piece, a Navy piece from the USS Sangay that hung in the mess hall. The Sangay was an ammunitions carrier, which was a very dangerous job because they carried, ammunition, gunpowder, cannon shells, mines. So they were sitting ducks, and the men on the ship nicknamed their ship Angel's Coffin because it was literally a floating coffin. And this was painted by, do you have his name?
Yeah, Mel Zimmerman was the artist.
Yeah, it's signed on the bottom. And it was brought home by Mr. Clifford.
Yeah, Jack Clifford from Valencia, yes. PA is the one who actually brought it home from the ship. Yep.
Yeah. He personally brought it with his daughter and gave it to us. And then somehow we were able to find the artist, the other sailor, and we had a reunion of the two in front of this this piece of art that hung in the mess hall, which they didn't know. They were served on the ship at the same time. They didn't know each other, but the relationship was one painted this and one brought it home. And you see, it's a little risque. It reflects the art of the period, pinup girls and such. And we somehow that toe line just got drooped down right in a strategic place.
Just in the perfect spot, just by chance, covering up the important.
Just by chance, yeah.
But yeah, that was really neat to see that reunited in 2010. Those sailors got together and met for the first time, and as the artist, obviously this was a significant piece for the artist, but obviously it also meant something to Mr. Clifford because he made the effort to bring it home with him and then eventually donate it to us. So there you can see she's sitting on there a mine, right? That's
they would lay mines, and that's one of the mines with the I don't want to call them barbs or sensors or fuses or whatever they are sticking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you can see a photo of the ship next to it there in real life there, the USS Sangay. So that's a really interesting piece there. And in that same vein, or that same exhibit, actually, we have the story here of apprentice aviation machinist mate second class. That's a mouthful, AAM2, Frank Kaka Jr. And here we see a great photo of Frank in his uniform, and then a photo with him and his mom. And I know we have some more slides here because we have quite a little collection here from Mr. Kaka.
Yeah, this has given us a chance not only to look at Kaka, but the uniforms. And we saw the uniform of the sailor at Soldiers and Sailors. And American naval uniforms didn't really change a lot over the course of 100 and maybe almost 200 years. With the jumper, the pullover jumper, with the bib in the back, the silk scarf, bell-bottom trousers with button-up fly. This was kind of a traditional uniform, and we see Kaka here with it, and we'll see a closer picture of it in a minute. But and the Dixie Cup hat is another thing that is very, very Navy. So this is really a uniform they came home in or went to shore on. It's not an everyday working uniform, but it's what we think of when we think of sailors, especially in the past.
Yeah, and I think our next one, there's a nice close-up of the actual uniform there. And like you said, he has the loose tie around the end there, the flap in the back, which I believe that's like a you called it a bib. I've heard it called like a tar flap. It kind of relates all the way back to the old days of, why sailors are called tars, because they used to put tar on the lines, to or tar in their hair, I should say, I think it was, right? So that they didn't get hung up in the lines, and they're, not, it kind of kept it. And then that tar flap or that bib kept the tar off the back of their uniform. So you had mentioned the nickname tars earlier back in the Civil War. That was a name that has stuck with sailors and this uniform for many years.
Yeah, and you notice the rate on his sleeve as well. That's where the rank would be on an enlisted sailor, and he is a aviation aircraft mechanic, but he's also he flew. He was a gunner that flew in the second seat on off an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, and I believe he flew in a torpedo bomber, right? So he would have flown missions to try to sink other enemy ships with the torpedo. But one of the most amazing pieces we have of Mr. Keika is his diary. Now, we have highlighted his diary before. If you're not aware, we have a large archives of past videos available on YouTube and Facebook. And we did a whole program about some of the diaries in our collection. And that's where we really highlighted this one here. But we wanted to revisit it, being that it's a Navy show, and obviously his service in the Navy. And Michael, what can you tell us a little bit about his diary?
Diaries are real important documents because they are of a person talking to themselves, really, and noting down daily what's happening. And Keika's diary is filled with great stuff like that. And we have it open to this page. You'll see a couple other pages in a minute, but Frank got married while he was in the Navy before he shipped out. And he's writing just everyday happenings. And on the first paragraph at the top, he breaks off and he's talking to his wife. And he says, "Ginny, you shall be reading this when I bring it home. When I bring it home to you. So I'd like to say, I love you, my sweet Jen." So that's so sweet. He's thinking of her maybe picking up his diary at some point in time and reading it. And we'll tell you what happens to him here in a minute. I think we have another page of.
Yeah, we can look at more of his, some of his artistic ability. That's a self-portrait there on the left of him on the ship there, and then some of his V-mail that he sent home. He clearly was a talented artist and liked to share those talents in his diary and in V-mail that he sent home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very talented. I mean, we happened to get the diary came in one donation, and there was an article done about it. And way over on the other side of the state, somebody had purchased all his letters and V-mail that became available. And when they saw we had the diary, they offered us all this other trove of great information and personal look at his personal life of Frank Keika's life. So we're very fortunate to have all that.
And there's another one here, a little bit there on the left. This is something we've talked about in some previous programs, but it's depicting some of the kind of the rituals of the sailors, especially when they cross like the equator or some of the tropic lines, and they go from a polywog to a shellback. It's kind of this whole mythology, or it's very similar to fraternal organizations, and it's a rite of passage for the first time that you cross over the equator. And I think he talks a little bit about his experience in the first time he crossed it, right, Michael?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, the characters he's drawing, those aren't just cartoon characters. Those are costumes that the sailors would wear. There was a whole ritual of crossing the equator and becoming, like you said, a polywog. And those are the characters that he's illustrating. And the one on the diary on the right, I mentioned that he flew, and this is he's pointing out a mission he was on, that they sunk a Japanese I think it was a tanker. They sunk a Japanese tanker. So he's showing the view of the tanker, where they're coming in, and where it was hit. So yeah, it's a very historic, historic way to see it from the cockpit.
Where we have one more here of just some more of his entries in there, Michael. I think this is pointing out some other the actions right from his time there.
Yeah, a lot of the actions he was in. He was at he flew over Iwo Jima, and he drew pictures of Iwo Jima, and these are other actions that he was in. And he had little notations for when they were successful, when they sunk a ship or other things, and he had pasted articles in the diary itself. So there's a lot there, but to talk about what happened to him. He took the place of another aerial gunner on a mission. The other fellow was sick, and Keika took his place. And that pilot and Keika disappeared. They never came back. We don't know if they were shot down or what. So in other words, there's a now on board ship. There's a trunk with Keika's belongings in it, and that's supposed to get shipped home. But we'll go on and talk a little bit in a minute about what happened, how it got to us, and
yeah, there's
whether it got home.
Yeah, a little bit more to this story of how it actually got to us, because of course Keika was not able to bring it home, and of course he was not able to bring it home so that Ginny could see it, which is where we started in that entry in his diary here. But before we continue the story, kind of just fitting in where we're talking about here, we wanted to point out this is a brand new exhibit that we have at Soldiers and Sailors. We've talked about this before. We're kind of in the middle of a large renovation project of all of our exhibits, and the project includes, this brand new look for the spaces that include one solid piece of glass for better viewing, better UV protection for the artifacts, better air control and humidity control. That whole front section swings open like a door, which allows Michael to create exhibits a lot easier. He has access to the whole inside to create the exhibit. So we've so far done 3 of these. We did 2 about the Korean War, and I think we highlighted that in our Korean War episode. Once again, you can see that in our archives. And then we just finished off our Navy one earlier this year. So wanted to give the overall picture of that. Really exciting for us to see this transformation. We want to keep that going. We're going to be beginning our full capital campaign for this project here shortly. And just wanted to take a moment to mention that. But within this new exhibit, one of the stories that is highlighted is Lieutenant Commander Frank Chase Perry. And this is where, Michael, you can pick us up with, kind of the connections to Keika, and also a little bit about just Frank Chase Perry himself.
Yeah, Perry was not a Pennsylvanian. His family moved here after he passed away. He was a Naval Academy graduate, became a pilot, flew lots of bombing missions. I forget, was he off to Lexington? I can't remember.
Yes.
Do you have that?
USS Lexington. Yep.
Yeah. So we have a number of his things, and we talked about the uniform earlier, and that was kind of the plain version. We'll see more, but this is Frank Chase Perry's dress accoutrements, his naval sword, a beautiful Navy sword. His on the right is his fore and aft cap. It's like one of these Napoleonic hats that went this way instead of this way, but it's all gold wire bullion, and it's just beautiful, but very hard to use, to find an occasion to use it. And it would have been transported in the box you see there. It's a metal box, a tin box with a closing lid. And inside there were his dress epaulets. This is high Navy tradition. And this is an officer that's a Navy Academy graduate. So he's gonna be a someone. And he goes on to fly off to Lexington and oftentimes Keika would be his rear seat gunner, and Perry, I think the next slide would be a good place to go. Perry personally sunk 2 Japanese ships. He had direct hits on them. On the right, you can see one of the photos from his cameras after the explosion. There's a series of these. There's a shock wave, there's fire, and then the ship is breaking up and going down. And for that really strategic event to market, Perry was awarded the Navy Cross, which is it's just below the Medal of Honor in the tier of gallantry awards. But not only did he get it once, he got it twice. He got 2 Navy Crosses. That's his medal bar right there, and the cross is on the left, and the star signifies a second award. We have all the paperwork describing, the citation and how he got it, and signed by Admiral Forrestal, and very impressive. It's a very small number of people that get 2 Navy Crosses. One's a pretty big honor. And beside that, you see the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, the Asiatic Pacific, and then the American Campaign. So Keika is, like I said, was a pilot on the. I'm sorry. Chase Perry was on a pilot on the Lexington, and he goes and cleans out. We surmise he cleaned out Keika's locker because Keika's diary was with Frank Chase Perry's things, and I always thought that Perry wanted to get the diary back to Keika's wife, but apparently that never happened, and it was with the Perry family stuff. Now, when we did our articles about Keika, we found his brother who was very young when Keika was killed, but he had never heard of the diary, never seen it, didn't know it existed. So imagine that coming into your life 75 years after your family member was killed. He was quite moved by knowing that it existed, and we sent him a copy of it.
So pretty amazing connections there, and just kind of speaks to how sometimes things come into our collection, and we don't always know what we're going to receive as a donation, and this one led us down a whole different path. Yes, it's amazing to have this collection of Lieutenant Commander Frank Chase Perry. 228 individuals have received 2 Navy Crosses. That's very low number for him to be a part of that. And then, also to be a part of that collection to receive the Keika story is really kind of special for us. So definitely wanted to highlight those 2 as a part of this program here. Now, another artifact that we have in that display, this new Navy display up at the top of it, is this thing here called a target kite. And I'll be honest, I was not familiar with this until I saw Lars. Makes complete sense, though, Michael. I think even most people watching can already kind of get an idea what this is. But why don't you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, it was something that was used on a carrier, and it was operated by a sailor that actually wore like this big box with a spool, and he had like a flipper control. It was attached to strings, and it has a rudder, and the sailor would operate it and make it dive and perform maneuvers while the machine gunners on the ship got a little bit of machine gun practice. So it was a target kite. This one has German markings, so it would have been something that was used in the Atlantic theater. It's really fun to Google the target kite because there's a Navy film that shows how they were used, and it's a toy, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this one's in pretty nice shape here. I was really impressed with that when we added that one to the exhibit there. And then the next piece we have from that exhibit is another one we've highlighted before, but man, you can't tell this story enough. It's a wonderful story of Coffee Pot Joe #2. And this is related to the sailors on the USS Urban and their service in the war. And they loved their coffee so much, they called their coffee pot Joe. It was, just a cup of Joe. Well, they nicknamed their coffee pot. He was basically a member of the crew. But As it turns out, Joe got damaged and they needed a replacement. And I guess some letters got written home. And here in Pittsburgh, the story got picked up. And a lady by the name of Miss Anna Balenciaga from Penn Hills sent them this coffee pot, which became known as Coffee Pot Joe #2. And it went on to serve the rest of the war with the sailors of the USS Urban. But then there's one more part to the story, right, Michael, where the sailors wanted to bring that home and return it home.
They did. They thought so highly of the gift, and it got a lot of use, obviously, that they tracked her down and wanted to return it to her personally. They came to her door to return it. Now, this is the day before social media, or even, not everybody even had a telephone. They came to her door. She was not there. She was at Kennywood Park with her family, having a good time. But they kind of worked it out where they could meet her and give it back to her. And when they brought it back, they had the names of all the engagements they were in and the names of the crew engraved on it for her in thanks for giving it to them.
Yeah, they have engraved on there that it survived 2 typhoons, and they estimated that cup or that coffee pot there served about 10,000 cups of coffee. So it got a lot of use and supplied those sailors with their all important cup of Joe there aboard the USS Urban. So that's a really unique piece that we have in that display as well. And then we have a couple more things from the display here. This is the story of Lieutenant Dorothy Riggle. This is her uniform. She was commissioned in 1943 as a lieutenant, junior grade. So this is a part of that, some of these first women in our military in the auxiliary units. And she went on to serve, 14 years in the Navy. However, it's not a complete, happy story. I mean, she definitely found a home in the military. She loved it. She took a lot of pride in her service. But Michael, she kind of ran up against some of the challenges that women faced in the military at that time.
Yeah, she was very bright, and she actually did a lot of the work in the offices that men would normally do. I mean, she just kind of picked up the ball and kept things working. And when it came time for promotion, she was passed over, and that she really felt that she deserved it, and she, from what we've read, she really did. But we refer to it as the glass ceiling, that she hit the glass ceiling, and because she was a woman, they really didn't take her seriously, and she then had some problems, and eventually resigned from the Navy, and spent much of her life trying to get at least get the promotion that she felt that she deserved. And we have all that correspondence. It's very interesting looking into what life was like for a woman in the Navy at that time, the barriers that she encountered.
Yeah, and I think one of the correspondence was even with Eleanor Roosevelt,
yes,
who wrote back to her saying that women, in quote, must expect to be limited in promotion. So even coming from, someone that was on her side and wanted to see that glass ceiling broken, kind of also being realistic, explaining that unfortunately it's the way it is. And like you said, I think it definitely affected Dorothy for her entire life. She did pass away in 2017, but as you said, continued to fight for the recognition that she deserved for her service in the Navy. So that's another story highlighted in that display there. And then one more from that display is the story of Petty Officer First Class Edwin S. Burkhart. And I think, Michael, you can tell us a little bit about the uniform. This is another example of a uniform here. But real quick, Ed, he served from 1985 to 1994. As a surface warfare specialist. He was from Sheridan, PA, and he did serve aboard the USS Independence during the Persian Gulf War. And he passed away back in 2021 due to complications from the Gulf War syndrome. And his estate actually donated the money that allowed us to kind of sponsor, in a way, this Navy case. And like I said, that was the reason we were able to keep moving forward with this renovation project. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be looking at the case that we're looking at right now. It's a big thanks to his estate that we have this. But we have the uniform on display, and I think it kind of gives us a different look, right, Michael? A different style, a different type, and a different use for the Navy uniform.
Yeah, this is your fatigue uniform. It's the dungarees and the light blue color shirt, cotton shirt, with your branch insignia stenciled on, name stenciled on. This is the most common. This is a uniform that sailors would wear when they're performing their duties on board ship or on base, whatever, mechanics. And it's we're not very familiar with it because we're used to seeing the other type that we looked at earlier. But these are actually kind of rare because when guys got out, if they didn't surrender these men and women, they would wear them to paint the house or cut the grass or tear them into rags or donate them to Goodwill. So they're actually kind of rare. And we're kind of, we get again a look at Petty Officer Burkhart's life and who he was in the Navy. And we looked at a guy who was a Naval Academy graduate pilot with 2 Navy crosses, and now we're looking at the guys that support everything, the guys that make everything work and keep things running, and that would be the Burkharts of the Navy.
Yeah. We are starting to run a little short on time, so I want to just point out real quick. We can go to the next slide. I won't get into the story. I think, Michael, maybe we'll skip over Lieutenant Commander Raymond Adinger, and I don't mean to shortchange him. We just did highlight his story in our Korean War show about 2 months ago or so. So please tune into that to get his story. Naval aviator. We wanted to highlight him here if we could, but because we're running short on time, I definitely wanted to get to this gentleman here. Of course, if you're watching these programs, many of you are familiar with our Hall of Valor program, which honors soldiers who've received the highest medals in our military. And this was an individual, Captain Michael Astosian, from the Vietnam War era, United States Navy pilot. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on April 20th and April 26th, 1967. He was serving aboard the USS Ticonderoga, and he led an attack on thermal power plants in Vietnam and encountered many surface-to-air missile threats. And he actually used what they called a Shrike attack. I had to learn this myself. A Shrike attack were missiles that were used to target SAMs. They would look for that radar, and they would hone in on that radar to attack a SAM missile site. So he had one successful mission on April 20th, where he destroyed a thermonuclear plant and a surface-to-air missile site. But on April 26th, once again, leading an attack on a SAM site, his aircraft was hit and went down, and he was declared missing in action. And he did not ever get found. In fact, the pilot that was with him was pretty sure he did not survive. That doesn't mean they didn't still search for the remains. He was never found, and he was declared dead in 1979. But this is a young man from Turtle Creek, Pennsylvania. He graduated from Slippery Rock University, and obviously, was an amazing naval pilot. I have to admit, I thought of Top Gun right away. I mean, they talk about the Navy pilots in Top Gun, the movies, and surface-to-air missile attacks, and here's a living, person that went through that experience in the Vietnam War, and for his heroics, he did receive the Medal of Honor. He also is accredited with, there's an award named after him, the Michael J. Astosian Award, which is awarded by the U.S. Navy in recognition of meritorious achievement by a Strike Force Squadron. And on top of that, he also has a ship named after him. And there we see the USS Astosian, which is a guided missile frigate, which was launched in 1979 and decommissioned in 2003. So once again, local man highlighted in our Hall of Valor. In this case, we're using him to represent the Vietnam era of the Navy, and just one of the many heroes that are enshrined in our Hall of Valor at Soldiers and Sailors. So with that, I think I'm going to start wrapping us up here. I think we have one more slide. We wanted to just show this real quick. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but this is our new kid zone that we have at Soldiers and Sailors, which uses the USS Pittsburgh as a theme. We're so happy to have this as a part of our museum for some of our younger visitors. We had 100 or so fourth graders at the museum today, and they got chances to play in the kid zone. And there's ways to sound alarms and load a ship properly and hang flags. It's an interactive, multi-sensory room. There's sounds going on in the room, and there's photos to look at in the porthole. It's just a great little hands-on exhibit for some of our younger visitors. So, and it's only been about a year or so, and we keep adding to it. Great reason if you have young ones to come and visit us at Soldiers and Sailors here. I think on top of that, we have some big upcoming events coming up. Our Silence of the Lambs Cage Night is coming up on Friday, October 24th. This is an annual event where we show the movie The Silence of the Lambs, of course, which was filmed at Soldiers and Sailors. And we have a replica of the cage from that scene, the famous scene in the movie that, like I said, was filmed in our building. And it's a great night. It's a great crowd. It's Halloween-y. Maybe it gets away from some of the things we talk about, in our related to our mission that we talk about in this program. But it's a great way to come see the museum. The museum is still available and accessible, but also appreciate a little bit of movie history and the Silence of the Lambs there. We also are currently in the middle of our Fill the Hill campaign. This is where you can purchase a flag to be placed in our front lawn to honor a veteran. We've been doing this the last few years. It's a great way to honor a veteran as well as make a small donation to Soldiers and Sailors. And it provides a beautiful visual with our front lawn filled with flags recognizing local veterans. So you can use that QR code or visit our website to learn more about that. And you can also, of course, learn how you can purchase a flag for a loved one that you want to get recognized. As always, if you want to visit the museum, you can come by Monday through Friday. Or Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're open to the public. We also have guided tours available by appointment only. We have our tabletop gamers coming up on our next meeting there on Saturday, October 18th. We'll be playing tabletop games at the museum. Lots of happenings. I always encourage you to visit our website, soldiersandsailorshall.org, and you're going to get all this great information about upcoming events, ways that you can help us through donations. And, shortly we're going to have a page there where you can help us with our project to renovate our exhibit. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be looking for help from the community for that. I'd also like to point out one person made a comment, August Marchetti. I don't know if you're still with us, August, but said they said that thank you for providing such great contact. And I want to say thank you for the comment and thank you for tuning in. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And I hope you all join us for next month's program, which will take place on November 13th at 7 o'clock. As always, 7 o'clock on that second Thursday is Spotlight On. And we are going to highlight the United States Cavalry. We will be doing a lot on the Civil War, but we'll also trace the cavalry and its kind of evolution through the years in later wars as well. So we hope you join us for the program on the United States Cavalry next month in November. So with all of that, Michael, I think we had a very full program tonight. Thank you for all of your knowledge and for all of your hard work. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And good night, everybody. Take care.